I was attempting to say a few things about the Hillary Rodham Clinton campaign. I've come to have some very suspicious views about the political process in the United States, and my friend, a friend of mine, I shall say, I will not mention his name, even if I said his name is Terry, John, Bill, whatever, it doesn't matter. But he told me a long time ago, he warned me, the two political parties are no different in the United States, and I believe this is true now. So the entire process of politics in the United States is the problem, not the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or the problems in the nation are not addressed by the parties. That's not part of the political process. The political process is to distract you from what are the problems in the United States: racism, militarism, poor education of people, poor application of the principles that were established in Brown versus Board of Education. Here in Rockford, for example, where I live, we had a People Who Care lawsuit, which was initiated by a man whom I very much respect, named Ed Wells, who initiated a lawsuit against the Rockford Public Board, or the Rockford Board of Education, because this district had one school in it. It had one school, West High School, that was integrated. And they were going to close the one school that had been integrated, and they were going to continue supporting the schools that were not yet integrated. So this city has been, as Dr. King said in the 60s, Birmingham is one of the most segregated cities in the United States of America. So what this lawsuit over 12 or so years in the United States in Rockford proved is true all over the United States today. That after 1954 Brown versus Board of Education, nothing was done. There wasn't anything done about integrating. See, what did integration mean? Integration meant breaking up those centers of all black people and reweaving them into the population and integrating them. That's what the word integration means. But integration was never achieved in this country. Whoever founded the country and still held slaves in the North, in the ghettos of New York, and in the barrios of the West of the United States, and in the South of the United States, still held those populations in slavery by economic necessity. So after Brown versus Board of Education, which implied that a whole 50 to 60 year Reconstruction era, the work of Reconstruction had not been done after the murder of President Lincoln in 1865. So no person in the United States can go around claiming Reconstruction in the United States occurred. What happened in the Reconstruction era was basically putting the South back together again after the Civil War, but it was put together again under the rubric of separation and segregation, and it was so badly done that in the 1960s, Dr. King had to do the work again of bringing this to the attention of the American people. And then Ed Wells in Rockford in 1990 or so had to do the work again of saying, you didn't do it yet. You didn't do yet what you told us you were going to do in 1953-54, Brown versus Board of Education. So the United States of America has suffered from a fatal weakness since the murder of President Lincoln that has not yet been attended to. No person has acknowledged this. Dr. King, in the 1960s, sent President Kennedy information about cities of the South. I forgot which city it is in particular, but he sent to them, I think it was Birmingham, but he sent to them information about cities of the South that were not desegregated. And he asked the president at that time to consider what needed to be done to desegregate those cities. And President Kennedy, because he was reluctant to take up that issue, because that was a very controversial issue, did not take up that issue. Then after his murder, we had the murder of Malcolm X in 65. Then after his murder, we had the murder of Dr. King in 68. And then in 68, after the murder of Dr. King, we had the murder of Robert Kennedy. So the country went through a series of executions of public leaders that traumatized the psyche of the whole nation and made people afraid to be involved in politics, and afraid to express themselves in politics, and afraid to put forward ideas about politics, because they all said, if Kennedy, the rich man, got murdered, I'll get murdered if I take it up. If Malcolm X, the powerful black man, got murdered, I'll get murdered if I take it up. If Dr. King, the intelligent, urbane student of Boston College with a PhD and an eloquent education from Morehouse College, got murdered, I'll get murdered if I take it up. If Robert Kennedy, the son of Joe Kennedy and the brother of President Kennedy, got murdered, if I take up that issue, then I'll be murdered. Is this any way for any leaders that want to be considered true leaders of a nation are to act? No. The question for you is, what are you going to do about it? Not what they did about it or what you're afraid is going to happen to you because you did something about it. If you stepped up and took the job, then you better do the work that they couldn't get done. But what do our leaders do today? They hide behind the assassinations of that era. And they're afraid that Vietnam and the civil rights movement in the 60s and the violence that it led to are the reason to not get involved in those issues, when the opposite is the case. That those things couldn't get done then and that they didn't get done then are the reason for them to get done now. Now, where is a single leader in our country today who says, if this work doesn't get done, then all the work of that era is going to be undone? I see no leader today, and so I'm looking for Hillary Clinton to be that leader. I'm looking for President Obama to rise to the occasion of his presidency. In the United States, we tend to stigmatize a second term president as a lame duck. So he sits in the White House office and he says, I can't do anything, I'm a lame duck. But it's not true. See? It's a lie that anybody who can reason can see through. That it's a setup. It's a way that the presidency is set up. It's a way, in fact, more broadly, that we stigmatize older people in the United States. The philosopher Aristotle said, a man doesn't really become capable of dealing with significant issues in politics until he's older. until he reaches his 47th year, until he reaches his 50th year, until he reaches his 53rd year. You know why that is? Because you haven't had enough experience yet to actually be able to deal with the world. So a Dr. King at 39 wasn't what he would have been at 49. So the tragedy is that he did die in the peak of his power, when he could have brought the most amelioration, or when he could have brought to bear his mind. See, Dr. King said, what thing I wanted to do most of all in my life? I didn't want to be having to be doing those protest marches. I didn't want to have to be in the streets of Birmingham. I didn't want to have to be in the streets of Atlanta. I wanted to teach at a college. I wanted to teach students. See? That was the younger man seeing what the older man could have brought to the country, and the death that he unfortunately had caused our country to not have the advantage of his incredible intellect being brought to bear on solving some of this country, the history of this country's most important problems. And that's the sad thing, you know? But the leaders today, they still fear that era. They still fear that the overturning of the traditional order, because this is a very conservative nation. And so people are very like, let's just obey the law. Let's just do what we're told. Let's not stir the pot. But that, in light of that, nothing can get done. See? It is not ever like one person is pointing at himself, like a Jeff Newsom would ever point. If I ever get in politics in the United States, I'm never going to point to myself and go, I can do what you can't do. I can bring to the country what you can't bring. I can be I can't be what the American people are, because the American people are the ones that have the ideas about what they want done with their country. See? But there can be a leader that organizes the energy of the people. And this is what democracy means. It means the organization of the people, and then the presentation of the organization of the people under a leader in a Republican form of government. See, our form of government is a Republican form of government, which means that it is a democracy, but it also is a representative democracy. So we have representatives because those representatives, President Obama presently, is a better organizer of the opinions of the American people because he's more educated. He has a law degree, and most people in the United States don't have a law degree. See? So he can bring before them an organized set of opinions after he listens, after he goes out and listens to what young people say. After he goes out and listens to what the people say, he can come to the White House and say, reflecting on that, he can then transmit to his cabinet what he thinks the American people want to have done about issues of major significance. And that's what republicanism means. Not the Republican Party, founded by Lincoln, or the Democratic Party, if you will, but the organization of the people's ideas for the betterment of the country. That's the best. See, that's bringing the best out of the people, even if they couldn't express it in the best way themselves. Our leaders organize that, and they make the country better by doing so.